Can you hear me now? Almost. Almost back online. Christ on a cracker. Why is it not working? Come on now. Come to me, handy second cam. Yeah, it's kind of working. No, it was actually asking to connect for debugging, but where is the cam thing? Where is the cam thing? It's not there. Let's see. Oh my word. Ah, success. We have everything back online. Well, well, well. Where did we leave it? We were about to put the meat in. Now then, I turned it off, guys. So wherever we left off, that's basically it. I'm going to try moving this again. I'm on an ether cable now. We're hardwired in everywhere. Fingers crossed. Oh my god, so many things to consider. All new adventures, though, isn't it? So layer out getting in the way over that. We still good? Are we good? Are we good? It's fine again. Yeah, the reason it lagged is because my. Oh, don't do this. Am I good? 9 out of 10. That's me pretending that I'm not making any noise. All right. So turn the heat back up. Crank it up to 9, baby. We're going all the way. Whew. Okay. So anyway, look, there it is. I'm going to bang the leek in as well. Leek. Bay leaves going in. Hold back on the parsley for now. And the thyme. Don't want that to end up there. So keep souping. Okay. So let's talk. We were talking about salt. And these days, I just like to use a mix of salt. So we get a mix of vitamins and minerals. I mean, not vitamins, but minerals. Quick, smoke a pack of cigarettes while it's okay. How much salt? Enough. You can always put in more later, but it does help draw out the juices and stuff from everything else. So I'd say that was probably okay. We are back on track. let us get the meat out the oven. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Crispy. There's that bit of ligament, by the way, in case anybody was wondering that I cut off that kind of stuff, but in it goes. Oh my word. Put a bit of hot water in there. Make sure we get all those juices out. Boom. Boom shalakalaka. Okay. And our parsley and thyme, bang them in. Where's our and our peppercorns? I'll get used to working around these cameras. There it goes. And I said 3 liters, didn't I? So measure out 3 liters of water. Well, we want it covered basically, guys. So if we need a bit more than 3 liters, we'll see how it looks. Then we'll go a bit more. That's 2. Oh yeah, we're gonna make a monster broth. I think we're gonna have to go for 4 liters on this. But that's okay. So that's 3. See, we're not quite covering our ingredients, are we? Or do we just have a rearrange? Just jumble them around a bit. Nah, we need a bit more. So 3 and a bit. Once those veg starts softening up, it's going to cook. So everything's. We can always top it more later. Okay. I just realised. Oh dear. Oh dear. I didn't buy milk, did I? So anyway, we're gonna get the lid on that, and we're gonna chat for a bit. How am I gonna do pancakes if I don't have milk? Luckily, I've got tech support here today. There's a shop across the road. All right. Okay, we're gonna just have a little fiddle around here with the microphone situation. Okay, we're back on. Oh, God, it's all an adventure, isn't it, eh? I was just staring at you. I was standing very still, not making any noise whatsoever. That's because I'm a really amazing physical theatre performer. That's one of my skills. Anyway, so frittaten without milk. I don't think we're gonna go down that route. I'm not gonna make pancakes without milk. Sorry. But you can, of course, at a pinch, make pancakes without milk. But why would you? Why would you want to? Why would you want to do that? Okay. So anyway, we're going to get onto the pancake batter, and then this soup's going to need to cook, right? It needs to cook. So I figure maybe we sit down with a glass of wine or a cup of tea and read some Poe with different area codes. I do like goat's milk, probably enough, but we left the goat in Scarlett's. It's been well discussed. Why would you want to do that? Exactly. How's chat? Nice cup of Poe. So this is going to take a while to cook through, isn't it? Oh, it's warming up though. It is warming up. Oh, so exciting. I think there's anything better than soup. Hey, first time chat. Pierre Antonia. Pierre Anton. But you can, indeed. Yes, you can. And actually, goat and sheep's milk is normally okay for people with lactose issues. Your soup is simmering already. Good for you. Bring it to a boil. Turn it down. You can do a hard cook for 30 minutes. And then we are going to turn it down. Rotisserie chicken in the bath is better than soup, arguably. I'd agree with you. Yeah, of course, in a pinch, you're quite right. I'm not doubting that. I mean, you got to do what you got to do, innit? How dare you even suggest such a thing? How dare you suggest that radish? Oh my goodness. Anyone say goat? Yeah, me. Goat. Show the shirt. Show the shirt. No, you show the shirt. Why don't you show it? Okay, what a booster. Thanks. This soup. This soup better be worth it. uh,
Sorry, babe.
I can't believe Twitch took him out back and shot him for that striptease. Hang on, no, I showed them my T-shirt. All right, it was. Look, the soup is not cursed. Do not even bring that up. It's just there's a cable now, and the cable got tripped on. That's all. That's all. Twitch could not handle the Riz. You got it. That's about the size of it. All right, pancakes, and this is going to be dead easy. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to read Poe first because this soup needs to cook. So, I will make myself comfortable here for you children. Get myself my cuppa. You can watch the pot. We are going to want to skim the scum at some point. All right. Okay. Okie dokie. Oh, how's that? Take a nice seat. Never forget to skim your scum. It's about right. Follow the spoon. How's that? We happy? We never finished the Adventures of Hans Pfahl. God, that went on. Maybe we'll get back to it one day. We need to find something a little shorter, I think. Does anybody have a request? Who's that? We could start with a poem, couldn't we? To Isadora. So, are you ready? Purloined letter. All right, I'll check it out. To Isadora. Beneath the vine-clad eaves, whose shadows fall before the lowly cottage door, under the lilac's tremulous leaves, within the snowy clasped hand, the purple flowers it bore. Last eve in dreams I saw thee stand like queenly nymphs from fairyland, enchantress of the flowery wand, most beauteous Isadora. And when I bade the dream upon thy spirit flee, thy violet eyes to me upturned did overflowing seem, with the deep untold delight of love's serenity. Thy classic brow, like lilies white, and pale as the imperial night upon her throne, with stars bedight, enthralled my soul to thee. Ah, ever I behold thy dreamy, passionate eyes, blue as the languid skies, hung with the sunset's fringe of gold. Now strangely clear thine image grows, and olden memories are startled from their long repose, like shadows on the silent snows, when suddenly the night wind blows where quiet moonlight lies. Like music heard in dreams, like strains of harps unknown, of birds forever flown, audible as the voice of streams, that murmur in some leafy dell, I hear thy gentlest tone, and silence cometh with her spell, like that which on my tongue doth dwell, when tremulous in dreams I tell my love to thee alone. In every valley heard, floating from tree to tree, less beautiful to me, the music of the radiant bird, than artless accents such as thine, whose echoes never flee. Ah, for thy sweet voice I pine, for uttered in thy tones benign, enchantress, this rude name of mine doth seem a melody. Oh, he's got away with words, that Mr. Edgar Allan Poe, isn't he? If you read to soup, it will taste better. Yeah, yeah, Polar. Yeah, Pandy, I'm with you. Like talking to plants, they grow better, they like it, don't they? That's me with Jobston Radzig. Okay, one more poem, and then we'll try and for this short story. We'll check on the soup first. Alone. From childhood's hour I have not been as others were. I have not seen as others saw. I could not bring my passions from a common spring. From the same source I have not taken my sorrow. I could not awaken my heart to joy at the same tone. And all I loved alone. Then, in my childhood, in the dawn of a most stormy life, was drawn from every depth of good and ill the mystery which binds me still. From the torrent or the fountain, from the red cliff of the mountain, from the sun that round me rolled in its autumn tint of gold, from the lightning in the sky as it passed my flying by, from the thunder and the storm and the cloud that took the form, when the rest of heaven was blue, of a demon in my view. Dad's trying to put us to sleep while the stove is on. Well, you don't have to lie down, Barbarian. You can move around the kitchen. What was the story again? Someone mentioned something. What was it? Something about a letter, wasn't it? The purloined letter. 15 pages. Yeah, I think we can. I think we can probably get through that while the soup is cooking. 208. Page 208. It's an excellent bookshop in Prague called Shakespeare and Son. Shakespeare and Sons. Okay, let me check on the soup before we do that, because it's good to skim before it starts boiling. What are your big spoon? It's not looking too scummy. Chuck it in here for now, can't I? Looks all right. It's just when it starts to boil, but we're all a little ways off yet. We'll see. All right. I got my tea, but I will swap to a glass of wine in a bit. Oh, it's the story that inspired Sherlock Holmes, is it now? Okay. I lie down in bed and it's the best thing. My boyfriend's cooking and my best friend is playing video games in the other room and you're reading. Perfect atmosphere. Cool, Jar Jar. Sounds good. Nice. Just bread is also a legit dinner. With salt or no salt? Okay, I didn't know that, Alison. We might have a crack at old Sherlock Holmes as well. Maybe swap it up a bit. Ooh. Dream Logan can have a little gluten. Yeah, would be nice for him, I guess, but it is what it is. Oh, I'll tell you something else I picked up today, which is rather exciting. Where have I put them now? What the blazes? Where are they? Ah. Finger bananas or apple bananas. Look at those. These ones at the back are twins. Very cute, very tasty. If you ever get the chance, give it a go. All right, we'll hear it. We'll take a small hiatus from the reading when we get there. The purloined letter. All right. There's a quote from Seneca here. Unfortunately, I do not read Latin. I don't know Latin, but we'll give it a go. The purloined letter. Nil sapientiae odiosis acumine nimio. Seneca. At Pyrrhus, just after dark one gusty evening in the autumn of 18 something or other, I was enjoying the twofold luxury of meditation and a meerschaum in company with my friend C. Auguste Dupin in his little black library or book closet in Au Troisième, number 33, Rue du Nant, Faubourg Saint-Germain. For 1 hour at least we had maintained a profound silence, while each, to any casual observer, might have seemed intently and exclusively occupied with the curling eddies of smoke that oppressed the atmosphere of the chamber. For myself, however, I was mentally discussing certain topics which had formed for matter of conversation between us at an earlier period of the evening. I mean the affair of the Rue Morgue and the mystery attending the murder of Marie Roget. I looked upon it, therefore, as something of a coincidence when the door of our apartment was thrown open and admitted our old acquaintance, Monsieur G., the prefect of the Parisian police. We gave him a hearty welcome, for there was nearly half as much of the entertaining as of the contemptible about the man, and we had not seen him for several years. We had been sitting in the dark, and Dupin now arose for the purpose of lighting a lamp, but sat down again without doing so, upon G's saying that he had called to consult us, or rather to ask the opinion of my friend, about some official business which had occasioned a great deal of trouble. If it is any point requiring reflection, observed Dupin as he forebore the enkindled wick, we shall examine it in better purpose in the dark. That is another of your odd notions, said the prefect, who had the fashion of calling everything odd that was beyond his comprehension, and thus lived amid an absolute legion of oddities. Very true, said Dupin, as he supplied his visitor with a pipe and rolled toward him a comfortable chair. And what is the difficulty now? I asked. Nothing more in the assassination way, I hope? Oh, no, nothing of that nature. Fact is, the business is very simple, indeed, and I make no doubt that we can manage it sufficiently well ourselves. But then I thought of Dupin, would like to hear of the details of it, and because it is so excessively odd. Simple and odd, said Dupin. Well, yes, and not exactly the either. The fact is, we've all been a good deal puzzled about the affair. It's so simple, and yet baffles us altogether. Perhaps it is the very simplicity of the thing which puts you at fault, said my friend. Well, what nonsense you do talk, replied the prefect, laughing heartily. And perhaps the mystery is a little too plain, said Dupin. Oh, good heavens, who ever heard of such an idea? A little too self-evident. Oh, roared our visitor, profoundly amused. Oh, Dupin, you will be the death of me yet. And what, after all, is the matter on hand? I asked. Well, I will tell you, replied the prefect, as he gave a long, steady, and contemplative puff and settled himself in his chair. I will tell you in a few words, but before I begin, let me caution you that this is an affair demanding the greatest secrecy, and that I should most probably lose the position I now hold were it known that I confided it to anyone. Soup check. Mm-hmm. Skim the scum, you know what I mean. There it is. Once that starts boiling, it's the scum mixes back in. I've missed that several times. We'll lose a little bit of liquid here, but oh, scummy. Also skims some of the fat off, which of course we want some of, but not too much. She's coming to the boil. Mm-hmm. Okay. That'll do. For now. I can hear it tickling away. Proceed, I said. Or not, said Dupin. Well then, I've received personal information from a very high quarter that a certain document of the last importance has been purloined from the royal apartments. The individual who purloined it is known. This is beyond a doubt. He was seen to take it. It is known also that it still remains in his possession. How is this known? Asked Dupin. It is clearly inferred, replied the prefect, from the nature of the document and from the non-appearance of certain results which would at once arise from its passing out of the robber's possession, that it is to say, from his employing it as he must design in the end to employ it. Be a little bit more explicit, I said. Well, I may venture so far as to say that the paper gives its holder a certain power in a certain quarter where such power is immensely valuable. The prefect was fond of the cant of diplomacy. Still, I do not understand, said Dupin. No? Well, the disclosure of the document to a third person, who shall be nameless, would bring in question the honour of a personage of most exalted station, and this fact gives the holder of the document an ascendancy over the illustrious personage whose honour and peace are so jeopardized. But this ascendancy, I interposed, would depend upon the robber's knowledge of the loser's knowledge of the robber. Who would dare? The thief, said G, is the minister D, who dares all things, those unbecoming as well as those becoming a man. The method of the theft was not less ingenious than bold. The document in question, a letter to be frank, had been received by the personage robbed while alone in the royal boudoir. During its perusal, she was suddenly interrupted by the entrance of the other exalted personage, from whom especially it was her wish to conceal it. After a hurried and vain endeavour to thrust it in a drawer, she was forced to place it, open it was, upon a table. The address, however, was uppermost, and the contents thus unexposed, the letter escaped notice. At this juncture, the minister D, his lynx eye immediately perceives the paper, recognizing the handwriting of the address, and observes the confusion of the person addressed, and fathoms her secret. After some business transactions, hurried through in his ordinary manner, he produces a letter somewhat similar to the one in question, opens it, pretends to read it, and then places it in close juxtaposition to the other. Again he converses for some 15 minutes upon the public affairs. At length, in taking leaves, he takes also from the table the letter to which he had no claim. Its rightful owner saw, but of course dared not call attention to the act in the presence of the third personage who stood at her elbow. The minister decamped, leaving his own letter, one of no importance, upon the table. The soup cooketh. Oh, we're right in the thick of it. It'll be hot now. Use a glove. There we go. Woohoo! It's steaming up, boys and girls. All right, now we are boiling. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn that back a little bit. We do want it to roll at the beginning. Oh, there's already color in it. I'm so excited by this. This is great. All right, so we want a little bit of a boil on there. Keep the lid at the half cock. Let some of that water evaporate while it's boiling. We shall set a wee timer for 20 minutes. Let's say 25 actually. Once this is 25, we're going to turn it back. We're going to run. It's a bit of a long stream here, guys. I might have to cut it short though. We'll see how I go with the reading, and then we get on. Of course, you might also need to dive out, but we'll see. We'll get the pancakes made. So the minister decamped with the letter, folks. Here then, said Dupin to me, you have precisely what you demand to make the ascendancy complete. The robber's knowledge of the loser's knowledge of the robber. Yes, replied the prefect, and the power thus attained has, for some months, been wielded for political purposes to a very dangerous extent. The personage robbed is more thoroughly convinced every day of the necessity of reclaiming her letter, but this, of course, cannot be done openly. In fine, driven to despair, she has committed the matter to me. Than whom, said Dupin, amid a perfect whirlwind of smoke, no more sagacious agent could, I suppose, be desired or even imagined. Well, you flatter me, replied the prefect, but it is possible that some such opinion may have been entertained. It is clear, I said, as you observe, that the letter is still in the possession of the minister, since it is this possession and not any employment of the letter which bestows the power. With the employment of the power departs. True, said G, and upon this conviction I proceeded. My first care was to make thorough search of the minister's hotel, and here my chief embarrassment lay in the necessity of searching without his knowledge. Beyond all things, I have been warned of the danger which could result from giving him reason to suspect our design. But, I said, you are quite au fait in these investigations. The Parisian police have done this thing often before. Oh, yes, and for this reason I do not despair. The habits of the minister gave me, too, a great advantage. He is frequently absent from home all night. His servants are by no means numerous. They sleep at a distance from the minister's apartment, and being chiefly Neapolitans, are readily made drunk. I have keys, as you know, with which I can open any chamber or cabinet in Paris. For 3 months a night has not passed, during the great part of which I have not been engaged personally in ransacking the D Hotel. My honour is interested, and to maintain a great secret the reward is enormous. So I did not abandon the search until I had become fully satisfied that the thief is a more astute man than myself. I fancy I've investigated every nook and corner of the premises in which it is possible that the paper can be concealed. But is it not possible, I suggested, that although the letter may be in possession of the minister, as it unquestionably is, he may have concealed it elsewhere than upon his premises? This is barely possible, said Dupin. The present peculiar condition of affairs at court, and especially those intrigues in which the D is known to be involved, would render the instant availability of the document, its susceptibility of being produced at a moment's notice, a point of nearly equal importance with its possession. Its susceptibility of being produced, I said. That is to say, of being destroyed, said Dupin. True, I observed. The paper is clearly then upon the premises. As for its being upon the person of the minister, we may consider that as out of question. Entirely, said the prefect. He's been twice waylaid as if by footpads, and his person rigidly searched under my own inspection. You may have spared yourself this trouble, said Dupin. D presumes, I presume, is not altogether a fool, and must have anticipated these waylayings as a matter of course. Not altogether a fool, said G, but then he is a poet, which I take to be only one remove from a fool. True, said Dupin, after a long and thoughtful whiff from his meerschaum. Although I have been guilty of certain doggerel myself. Suppose you detail, I said, the particulars of your search. Why, the fact is, we took our time. We searched everywhere. I've had long experience in these affairs. I took the entire building, room by room, devoting the nights of a whole week to each. We examined first the furniture of each apartment. We opened every possible drawer, and I presume you know that to a properly trained police agent such a thing as a secret drawer is impossible. Any man is a dolt who permits a secret drawer to escape him in search of this kind. The thing is so plain. There is a certain amount of bulk of space to be accounted for in every cabinet, and then we have accurate rules. The 50th part of the line could not escape us. After the cabinets, we took the chairs. The cushions were probed with long, fine needles you have seen me employ. From the tables, we removed the tops. Why so? Sometimes the top of a table or other similarly arranged piece of furniture is removed by the person wishing to conceal an article. Then the leg is excavated, the article deposited within the cavity, and the top replaced. The bottoms and tops of bedposts are employed in the same way. But could not the cavity be detected by sounding? I asked. By no means if, when the article is deposited, a sufficient wadding of cotton be placed around it. Besides, in our case, we were obliged to proceed without noise. But could you not have removed You could not have taken to pieces all articles of furniture in which it would have been possible to make a deposit in the manner you mention. A letter may be compressed into a thin spiral roll, not differing much in shape or bulk from a large knitting needle, and in this form it might be inserted into the rung of a chair, for example. You did not take to pieces all chairs. Certainly not. We did better. We examined the rungs of every chair in the hotel, and indeed the jointings of every description of furniture, by the aid of a most powerful microscope. Had there been any traces of recent disturbance, we should not have failed to detect it instantly. A single grain of gimlet dust, for example, would have been as obvious as an apple. Any disorder in the gluing, any unusual gaping in the joints, would have sufficed to ensure detection. I presume you looked at the mirrors between the boards and the plates, and you probed the beds and the bedclothes as well as the curtains and carpets. That, of course. And when we had absolutely completed every particle of furniture in this way, then we examined the house itself. We divided its entire surface into compartments, which we numbered, so that none would be missed. Then we scrutinized each individual square inch through the premises, including the two houses immediately adjoining, with the microscope as before. The two houses adjoining? I exclaimed. You must have had a great deal of trouble. We had, but the reward offered is prodigious. You include the grounds of the houses? All the grounds are paved with brick. They gave us comparatively little trouble. We examined the moss between the bricks and found it undisturbed. And you looked among these papers, of course, into the books of the library? Certainly. We opened every package and parcel. We not only opened every book, but we turned over every leaf in each volume, not contenting ourselves with a mere shake, according to the fashion of some of our police officers. We also measured the thicknesses of every book cover with the most accurate measurement, and applied to each the most jealous scrutiny of the microscope. Had any of the bindings been recently meddled with, it would have been utterly impossible that the fact should have escaped observation. Some 5 or 6 volumes, just from the hands of the binder, we carefully probed longitudinally with the needles. You explored the floors beneath the carpets. Beyond doubt, we removed every carpet. We examined the boards with the microscope. And the paper on the walls, yes. And you looked into the cellars? We did. Then, I said, you've been making a miscalculation, and the letter is not upon the premises as you suppose. I fear you are right here, said the prefect. And now, Dupin, what would you advise me to do? To make a thorough search of the premises. That is to say, to make a thorough research of the premises. That is absolutely needless, replied G. I'm not more sure than I breathe than I am that the letter is not at the hotel. I have no better advice to give you, said Dupin. You have, of course, an accurate description of the letter? Oh, yes. And here the prefect, producing a memorandum book, proceeded to read aloud a minute account of the internal and especially of the external appearance of the missing document. Soon after finishing the perusal of this description, he took his departure, more entirely depressed in spirits than had ever known the good gentleman before. In about a month afterward, he paid us another visit, and found us occupied very nearly as before. He took a pipe and a chair, and entered into some ordinary conversation. At length I said, Well, but G, what of the purloined letter? I presume you have at last made up your mind that there is no such thing as overreaching the minister? Confound him, say I. Yes. I made the re-examination, however, as Dupin suggested, but it was all labour lost, as I knew it would be. How much was the reward offered, did you say? Asked Dupin. Why, a very great deal indeed, a very liberal reward. I don't like to say how much precisely, but one thing I will say, that I wouldn't mind giving my individual cheque for 50,000 francs to anyone who could obtain me that letter. The fact is, it is becoming of more and more importance every day, and the reward has been doubled lately. If it were trebled, however, I could do no more than I have done. Ah, yes, said Dupin drawlingly between the whiffs of his meerschaum. I really think, G, you have not exerted yourself to the utmost in this matter. You might do a little more, I think, eh? How? In what way? Why, you might employ counsel in the matter. Um, do you remember the story? Do you remember the story they tell of Abernethy? No, hang Abernethy. To be sure, hang him and welcome. But once upon a time, a certain rich miser conceived the design of sponging upon his Abernethy for a medical opinion. Getting up for this purpose an ordinary conversation in a private company, he insinuated his case to the physician as that of an imaginary individual. We will suppose, said the miser, that his symptoms are such and such. Now, doctor, what would you have directed him to take? Take? Said Abernethy. Why, take advice, to be sure. But, said the prefect, a little discomposed, I am perfectly willing to take advice and to pay for it. I would really give 50,000 francs to anyone who would aid me in the matter. In that case, replied Dupin, opening a drawer and producing a cheque-book, you may as well fill me up a cheque for the amount mentioned. When you have signed it, I will hand you the letter. I was astounded. The prefect appeared absolutely thunderstricken. For some minutes he remained speechless and motionless, looking incredulously at my friend with open mouth and eyes that seemed starting from their sockets. Then, apparently recovering himself in some measure, he seized a pen, and after several pauses and vacant stares, finally filled up and signed a cheque for 50,000 francs and handed it across the table to Dupin. The latter examined it carefully and deposited it in his pocket-book. Then, unlocking an escritoire, took thence a letter and gave it to the prefect. This functionary grasped it in a perfect agony of joy, opened it with a trembling hand, cast a rapid glance at its contents, and then, scrambling and struggling to the door, rushed at length unceremoniously from the room and from the house, without having uttered a syllable since Dupin had requested him to fill up the cheque. When he had gone, my friend entered into some explanations. The Parisian police, he said, are exceedingly able in their way. They are persevering, ingenious, cunning, and thoroughly versed in the knowledge with which their duties seem chiefly to demand. Thus, when G detailed to us his mode of searching the premises at Hotel D, I felt entire confidence in his having made a satisfactory investigation, so far as his labours extended. So far as his labours extended, said I. Oh, yes, said Dupin. The measures adopted were not only the best of their kind, but carried out to absolute perfection. Had the letter been deposited within the range of their search, these fellows would, beyond a question, have found it. I merely laughed, but he seemed quite serious in all that he said. The measures, then, he continued, were good in their kind and well executed. Their defect lay in their being inapplicable to the case and to the man. A certain set of highly ingenious resources are, with the prefect, a sort of Procrustean bed, to which he forcibly adapts his designs, but he perpetually errs by being too deep or too shallow for the matter in hand, and many a schoolboy is a better reasoner than he. I knew one about 8 years of age, whose success at guessing in the game of even and odd attracted universal admiration. This game is simple and is played with marbles. One player holds in his hand a number of these toys, and demands of another whether the number is even or odd. If the guess is right, the guesser wins one. If wrong, he loses one. The boy to whom I allude won all the marbles of the school. Of course, he had some principle of guessing, and this lay in mere observation and admeasurement of the astuteness of his opponents. For example, an arrant simpleton is his opponent, and holding up his closed hands, asks, "Are they even or odd?" Our schoolboy replies, "Odd," and loses. But upon the second trial he wins, for then he says to himself, "The simpleton had them even upon the first trial, and his amount of cunning is just sufficient to have made him made odd upon the second. I will therefore guess odd," and he guesses odd and wins. Now, with a simpleton a degree above the first, he would have reasoned thus: the fellow finds that in his first instance I guessed odd, and in the second he will propose to himself upon the first impulse a simple variation from even to odd, as did the first simpleton. But then a second thought will suggest that this is too simple a variation, and finally he will decide upon putting it even as before. I will therefore guess even. He guesses even and wins. Now, this mode of reasoning in this schoolboy, whom this fellow is termed lucky, what, in its last analysis, is it? What, it is merely, I said, an identification of the reasoner's intellect with that of his opponent. It is, said Dupin, and upon inquiring of the boy by what means he effected the thorough identification in which his success consisted, I received answers as follows. When I wish to find out how wise or how stupid or how good, how wicked is anyone, or what are his thoughts at the moment, I fashion the expression of my face as accurately as possible in accordance with the expression of his, then wait to see what thoughts or sentiments arise in my mind or heart as if to match or correspond with the expression. This response of the schoolboy lies at the bottom of all the spurious profundity which has been attributed to Rochefoucauld, to La Bougive, to Machiavelli, and to Campanella. And the identification, I said, of the reasoner's intellect with that of his opponent depends, if I understand you aright, upon the accuracy with which the opponent's intellect is admeasured. For its practical value it depends upon this, replied Dupin. And the prefect and his cohort failed so frequently, first by default of this identification, and secondly by ill admeasurement, or rather through non-admeasurement of the intellect with which they are engaged. They consider only their own ideas of ingenuity, and in searching for anything hidden, advert only to the modes in which they would have hidden it. They are right in this as much that their own ingenuity is a faithful representative of that of the mass, but when the cunning of the individual felon is diverse in character from their own, the felon foils them, of course. This always happens when it is above their own, and very usually when it is below. They have no variation of principle in their investigations. At best, when urged by some unusual emergency, by some extraordinary reward, they extend or exaggerate their old modes of practice without touching their principles. What, for example, in this case of D, had been done to vary the principle of action? What is all this boring and probing and sounding and scrutinizing with a microscope and dividing the surface of the building into registered square inches? What is all that but an exaggeration of the application of the one principle or set of principles of such, which are based upon the one set of notions regarding human ingenuity, to the which the prefect, in the long routine of his duty, has been accustomed? Do you not see that he has taken it for granted that all men proceed to conceal a letter, not exactly in a gimlet hole bored in a chair leg, but at least in some out of the way hole or corner suggested by the same tenor of thought, which would urge a man to secrete a letter in a gimlet hole bored in a chair leg? And do you not see also that such recherche nooks for concealment are adapted only for ordinary occasions, and would be adopted only by the ordinary intellects? For in all cases of concealment, a disposal of the article concealed, a disposal of it in this recherche manner, is in the very first instance a presumable and presumed, and thus its discovery depends not at all upon this acumen, but altogether upon the mere care, patience, and determination of the seekers. And where the case is of importance, or what amounts to the same thing in political eyes when the reward is of magnitude, the qualities in question have never been known to fail. You will now understand what I mean in suggesting that, had the purloined letter been hidden anywhere within the limits of the prefect's examination, in other words, had the principle of his concealment been comprehended within the principles of the prefect, its discovery would have been a matter altogether beyond question. This functionary, however, has been thoroughly mystified, and the remote source of his defeat lies in the supposition that the minister is a fool, because he has acquired renown as a poet. All fools are poets, this the prefect feels, and he is merely guilty of a non distributio medii, and thence inferring that all poets are fools. But is this really the poet? I asked. There are two brothers, I know, and both have attained a reputation in letters. The minister, I believe, has written learnedly on the differential calculus. He is a mathematician and no poet. You are mistaken. I know him well. He is both. As poet and mathematician, he would reason well. As mere mathematician, he could not have reasoned at all, and thus would have been at the mercy of the prefect. You surprise me, I said, by these opinions which have been contradicted by the voice of the world. You do not mean to set at naught the well-digested idea of centuries. Huh? Where did you lose me? What was the last bit in the reading? We were talking about bosoms. No, we weren't. We were talking about butts. Um, what you get? What you get mad about? Burps. Um, it did die, but where did we get to in the story? Um, it's all your fault, Valeria. It's all your fault. You thought the mustache was shiny. I got a shiny mustache. Uh, bully, bully, bully. No, but seriously, where do we get to the story? Because I don't know. I could just pick up from where we left off. Too many words. Sorry. Okay, Riomi, no worries. You weren't listening. You were just you were in the chat with me, kind of going on excuse me, on in the background, and you were being bullied. Is there anybody who's not part of this bullying of Valeria or being bullied Valeria who was actually listening? Um, I'm glad my efforts are being used to the best effect. How's that? I didn't even I didn't see the timer and I reached up to check what time it is. That's that's how my internal clock works. All right, gang. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna pop this over to a different um, ring and turn it down. Cause hey, first time chat ice creams. Poets are fools. Parts thereabouts. Okay, awesome. So we're gonna get back to that in a second. Let's just check in on the soup. Soup, soup-a-doop, soup-a-doop. Oh, All right. So we want to turn that down to, I can smell it. Oh my God, it's so good, guys. If you're cooking along, I'm sure you're having this full appreciation at home as well. Dunk those peppercorns back in. See that it's all moving around. Let's move it around a bit. Give it some agitation. Give it some grief. Oh my word. This is ridiculous. I know I'm going to be crying. All right, guys. This is going to want like an hour just tickling away. In the meanwhile, we'll finish up the story and then cook some pancakes. And then you guys can eat if you're cooking in your own time. But I'm going to have to dash. See what happens there. All right, let me get my vino. I actually found an Austrian wine because we got an Austrian soup. Grüner Veltliner. Mm. Uh, soup. Dim doop. Dim doop. Dim doom doom. Cheers, chat. Here's to you. How does Austrian wine compare? I don't know. Uh, I think good Austrian wine is pretty good, and comparable to good Czech wine. Let's just put it there. All Fools are Poets. Was it there? He therefore thinks he's a fool, but all fools are poets. Um, You will now understand what I mean in suggesting that had the purloined letter been hidden anywhere within the limits of the prefect's examination, in other words, had the principle of its concealment been comprehended within the principles of the prefect, its discovery would have been a matter altogether beyond question. This functionary, however, has been thoroughly mystified, and the remote source of his defeat lies in the supposition that the minister is a fool because he has acquired renown as a poet. All fools are poets, this the prefect feels, and he is merely guilty of a non distributio medii in thence inferring that all poets are fools. But is this really the poet? I asked. There are two brothers I know, and both have attained reputation in letters. The minister, I believe, has written learnedly on the differential calculus. He is a mathematician and no poet. Oh, you are mistaken. I know him both. I know him well, and he is both. As poet and mathematician, he could reason well. As mere mathematician, he could not have reasoned at all, and thus would have been at the mercy of the prefect. You surprise me, I said, by these opinions which have been contradicted by the voice of the world. You do not mean to set at naught the well-digested idea of centuries. The mathematical reason has long been regarded as the reason par excellence. Il y a à parier, replied Dupin, quoting from Chamfort, que toute idée publiquée, toute conviction reçue, est une sottise, car elle a convivu au plus grand nombre. The mathematicians, I grant you, have done their best to promulgate the popular error to which you allude, and which is none the less an error for its promulgation as truth. With an art worthy a better cause, for example, they have insinuated the term analysis into application to algebra. The French are the originators of this particular deception, but if a term is of any importance, lost my place. But if a term is of any importance, if words derive any value from applicability, then analysis conveys algebra about as much as in Latin ambitus implies ambition, religio, religion, or hominis, honesty, as set of honourable men. You have a quarrel on hand, I see, I said, and some of the algebraists of Paris, but proceed. I dispute the availability and thus the value of that reason which is cultivated in any special form other than the abstractly logical. I dispute in particular the reason adduced by mathematical study. The mathematics are the science of form and quantity. Mathematical reasoning is merely logic applied to observation upon form and quantity. The great error lies in supposing that even the truths of what is called pure algebra are abstract or general truths, and this error is so egregious that I am confounded at the university with which it has been received. Mathematical axioms are not axioms of general truth. What is true of relation of form and quantity is often grossly false in regard to morals, for example. In this latter science, it is very usually untrue that the aggregated parts are equal to the whole. In chemistry, also, the axiom fails. In the consideration of motive, it fails. For two motives, each of a given value, have not necessarily a value when united, equal to the sum of their values parts. There are numerous other mathematical truths which are only truths within the limits of relation, but the mathematician argues from his infinite truths through habit, as if they were of an absolutely general applicability, as the world indeed imagines them to be. Bryant, in his very learned Mythology, mentions an analogous source of error when he says that although the pagan fables are not believed, yet we forget ourselves continually and make inferences from them as existing realities. With the algebraists, however, who are pagans themselves, the pagan fables are believed, and the inferences are made not as much through lapse of memory as through an unaccountable addling of the brains. In short, I have never yet encountered the mere mathematician who would be trusted out of equal roots, for one who did not clandestinely hold it as a point of his face that x squared plus px was absolutely and unconditionally equal to q. Say to one of these gentlemen, by way of experiment, if you please, that you believe occasions may occur where x squared plus px is not altogether equal to q, and having made him understand what you mean, get out of his reach as speedily as convenient, for, beyond doubt, he will endeavour to knock you down. I mean to say, continued Dupin, while I merely laughed at his last observation, that if the minister had been no more than a mathematician, the prefect would have been under no necessity of giving me this check. I mean, however, as both mathematician and poet, and my measures were adapted to his capacity, with reference to the circumstances by which he was surrounded. I knew him as a courtier, too, and as a bold intrusiant. Such a man, I considered, could not fail to be aware of the ordinary political modes of action. He could not have failed to anticipate, and events have proved that he did not fail to anticipate, the waylayings to which he was subjected. He must have foreseen, I reflected, the secret investigations of his premises, his frequent absences from home at night, which were hailed by the prefect as certain aids to his success. I regarded only as ruses, to afford opportunity for thorough search to the police, and thus the sooner to impress them with the conviction to which G, in fact, did finally arrive, the conviction that the letter was not upon the premises. I felt also that the whole train of thought, which I was at some pains in detailing to you just now, concerning the invariable principle of political action in searches for articles concealed, I felt that this whole train of thought would be necessarily passing through the mind of the minister. It would imperatively lead him to despise all the ordinary nooks of concealment. He could not, I reflected, be so weak as to not see that the most intricate and remote recess of his hotel would be as open as his commonest closets to the eyes, to the probes, to the gimlets, and to the microscopes of the prefect. I saw, in fine, that he would be driven, as a matter of course, to simplicity, if not deliberately induced to it as a matter of choice. You will remember, perhaps, how desperately the prefect laughed when I suggested upon our first interview that it was just possible this mystery troubled him so much on account of it being so very self evident. Oh, yes, I said. I remember his merriment well. I really thought he would have fallen into convulsions. The material world, continued Dupin, abounds with very strict analogies to the immaterial, and thus some colour of truth has been given to the rhetorical dogma that metaphor or simile may be made to strengthen an argument as well as to embellish a description. The principle of the vis inertiae, for example, seems to be identical in physics and metaphysics. It is not more true in the former that a large body is with more difficulty set in motion than a smaller one, and that its subsequent momentum is commensurate with this difficulty than it is in the latter, that intellects of the vaster capacity, while more forcible, more constant, and more eventful in their movements than those of inferior grade, are yet the less readily moved and more embarrassed, and full of hesitation in the very few steps of their progress. Again, have you ever noticed which of the street signs over the shop doors are the most attractive of attention? I have never given the matter a thought, I said. There is a game of puzzles, he resumed, which is played upon a map. One party playing requires another to find a given word, the name of town, river, state, or empire, any word, in short, upon the motley and perplexed surface of the chart. A novice in the game generally seeks to embarrass his opponents by giving them the most minutely lettered names, but the adept selects such words as stretch in large characters from one end of the chart to the other. These, like the overly large letters, signs, and placards of the street, escape observation by dint of being excessively obvious, and here the physical oversight is precisely analogous with the moral apprehensions by which the intellect suffers to pass unnoticed those considerations which are too obtrusively and too palpably self-evident. But this is a point, it appears, somewhat above or beneath the understanding of the prefect. He never thought it once probable or possible that the minister had deposited the letter immediately beneath the nose of the whole world, by way of best preventing any portion of that from that world of perceiving it. But the more I reflected upon the daring, dashing, and discriminating ingenuity of D, upon the fact that the document must always have been at hand, if he intended to use it to good purpose, and upon the decisive evidence obtained by the prefect that it was not hidden within the limits of the dignitary's ordinary search, the more satisfied I became that to conceal this letter, the minister had resorted to the comprehensive and sagacious expedient of not attempting to conceal it at all. Full of ideas, full of these ideas, I prepared myself with a pair of green spectacles and called one fine morning by accident at the ministerial hotel. I found D at home, yawning, lounging, and dawdling as usual, and pretending to be in the last extremity of ennui. He is perhaps the most really energetic human being now alive, but that is only when nobody sees him. To be even with him, I complained of my weak eyes, and lamented the necessity of the spectacles, which cover of which I cautiously and thoroughly surveyed the whole apartment, while seemingly intent only upon the conversation of my host. I paid especial attention to a large writing table near which he sat, upon which lay confusedly some miscellaneous letters and other papers, with one or two musical instruments and a few books. Here, however, after a long and very deliberate scrutiny, I saw nothing to excite particular suspicion. At length my eyes, in going to the circuit of the room, fell upon a trumpery filigree card rack of pasteboard, that hung dangling by a dirty blue ribbon from a little brass knob just beneath the middle of the mantelpiece. In this rack, which had 3 or 4 compartments, were 5 or 6 visiting cards and a solitary letter. This last, which was much soiled and crumpled, was torn nearly in two across the middle, as if a design in the first instance to tear it entirely up as worthless had been altered or stayed in the second. It had a large black seal bearing the D cipher very conspicuously, and was addressed in a diminutive female hand to D, the minister himself. It was thrust carelessly, and even as it seemed contemptuously, into one of the uppermost divisions of the rack. No sooner had I glanced at this letter than I concluded it to be that of which I was in search. To be sure, it was, to all appearance, radically different from the one which the prefect had read to us minute description. Here the seal was large and black with the D cipher. There it was small and red with the ducal arms of the S family. Here the address to the minister was diminutive and feminine. There the superscription to a certain royal personage was markedly bold and decided. The size alone formed a point of correspondence. But then the radicalness of these differences, which was excessive, the dirt, the soiled and torn condition of the paper, so inconsistent with the true methodical habits of D, and so suggestive of a design to delude the beholder into an idea of the worthlessness of the document. These things, together with the hyper-obtrusive situation of this document, full in the view of every visitor, and thus exactly in accordance with the conclusions to which I had previously arrived, these things, I say, were strongly corroborative of suspicion in one who came with the intention to suspect. It's really quite good. I protracted my visit as long as possible, and while I maintained a most animated discussion with the minister upon a topic which I knew well had never failed to interest and excite him, I kept my attention really riveted upon the letter. In this examination, I committed to memory its external appearance and the arrangement in the rack, and also fell at length upon a discovery which set at rest whatever trivial doubt I might have entertained. In scrutinizing the edges of the paper, I observed them to be more chafed than seemed necessary. They presented the broken appearance which is manifested when a stiff paper, having been once folded and pressed with a folder, is refolded in the reverse direction in the same creases or edges which had formed the original fold. This discovery was sufficient. It was clear to me that the letter had been turned, as a glove inside out, redirected and resealed. I bade the minister good morning, and took my departure at once, leaving a gold snuff-box upon the table. The next morning I called for the snuff-box, when we resumed quite eagerly the conversation of the preceding day. While thus engaged, however, a loud report, as if of a pistol, was heard immediately below the windows of the hotel, and was succeeded by a series of fearful screams and the shoutings of a terrified mob. D rushed to a casement, threw it open, and looked out. In the meantime, I stepped to the card rack, took the letter, put it in my pocket, and replaced it by a facsimile, so far as regarded the externals, which I had carefully prepared at my lodgings, imitating the D cipher, very readily by means of a seal formed of bread. The disturbance in the street had been occasioned by the frantic behavior of a man with a musket. He had fired it among a crowd of women and children. It proved, however, to have been without a ball, and the fellow had suffered to go his way as a lunatic or drunkard. When he had gone, D came from the window, whither I had followed him immediately upon securing the object in view. Soon afterward I bade him farewell. The pretended lunatic was a man in my own pay. "But what purpose had you," I asked, "in replacing the letter by a facsimile? Would it not have been better at the first visit to have seized it openly and departed?" "D," replied Dupin, "is a desperate man and a man of nerve. His hotel, too, is without attendants devoted to his interests. Had I made the wild attempt you suggest, I might never have left the ministerial presence alive. The good people of Paris might have heard of me no more. But I had an object apart from these considerations. You know my political prepossessions. In this matter, I act as a partisan of the lady concerned. For 18 months the minister has had her in his power. She is now him in hers. Since, being unaware that the letter is not in his possession, he will proceed with his exactions as if it was. Thus will he inevitably commit himself at once to his political destruction. His downfall, too, will not be more precipitate than awkward. It is all very well to talk about the facilis descensus Averni, but in all things of climbing, as Catalini said of singing, it is far more easy to get up than to come down. In the present instance, I have no sympathy, at least no pity, for him who descends. He is that monstrum horrendum, an unprincipled man of genius. I confess, however, that I should like very well to know the precise character of his thoughts when, being defied by her whom the prefect terms a certain personage, he is reduced to opening the letter which I have left for him in the card rack. How? Did you put anything particular in it? Why, it did not seem altogether right to leave the interior blank. That would have been insulting. D, at Vienna once, did me an evil turn, which I told him quite good humouredly that I should remember. So, as I knew he would feel some curiosity in regard to the identity of the person who had outwitted him, I thought it was a pity not to give him a clue. He's well acquainted with my MS, and I just copied into the middle of the blank sheet the words Un dessin si funeste, s'il n'est digni attrait, y digne de tiest. They are bound to be found in Crébillon's entrée. All right, guys, we're going to hurry this along. We're going to make this batter. We're going to fry up one pancake, and then you guys can get to it on your own. All right, because that's where we're at right now. Okay, I need my bowl cleaned. Hot water and some